welcome to 561 Music. My name's Ben.
And I'm Hector.
How are you, Hector?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right, man. So you've just finished another monumental mural, haven't you?
Yeah, man. It was 14 feet by 14 feet, I believe.
Is that the
like
one
that.
with Craig McGuinness?
Yeah,
like the music-based one.
Yeah, that guy. It's over at Audio Advisors on Palm Beach Lakes, and that guy's just so uber talented. I mean, he just oozes talent.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun, man. It was. I appreciated the work, and I appreciated working with side by side with him and stuff. So it was fun.
I saw a little detail of one of the things is you had a guitar amp volume knob and you made it go to 11. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. It's got to go to 11.
So
man.
Was that like a
One
last
more than
minute
10.
thing, or did you?
No, that was actually, we had it, I guess he's the one who actually designed the mural. And so
Right.
He had it going to 10. And I guess at some point the owner had a conversation with him, and he's a Spinal Tap fan, and was like, oh, it's got to go to 11. So,
Okay.
So that was just like an addition while we were doing the mural. We just added the 11 in there.
That's
So,
awesome.
Yeah,
I love it.
It was fun.
Now, I've been learning get the vocal lines for a bunch of country songs because I have this gig on Sunday. So I've been spending all week just like with a slide learning like the vocal lines to the verses of like it's 5 o'clock somewhere and stuff like that. It's been a weird week.
Wagon wheel.
All right. Well, we have Carl Schmid on with us today. How's it going, Carl?
Ben, how are you? Hector,
good.
how are you?
Good, man. How are you?
Thanks so much for having me, guys.
absolutely.
Oh, thanks for coming, man. We've been seeing a little bit of each other lately, haven't we?
We have. We
Yeah,
have
it's
indeed.
been awesome.
It's been great.
So, can you just give us a little bit of an idea of what you're sort of doing musically at the moment, where you're at with it all?
Oof, right off the top, huh?
Yeah.
Well, I'm doing a lot of different stuff than I used to do,
Right.
for sure. So a lot of what I'm focusing on is music and healing in a broader sense, in a more specific sense, working with music and frequency and spirituality and where they sort of all mix together.
Sure.
I work for a drug and alcohol treatment center part-time doing music groups. So I bring in different topics, music ideas to clients who are currently in residential treatment.
Yeah. You've had me come down a couple of times.
I have
haven't
had you come down.
Yeah.
It's been great.
Actually,
Ben, I will say this, and I'll probably get crucified. You were the favorite of all of them.
Oh, cool.
You're the favorite of all the clients.
That's
man.
awesome.
I'm really happy to have you there. So.
Well, it was really fun for me to do, and as someone who's in recovery, it was it's just a great way to, because you have to, anyone who doesn't know anything about recovery, part of it, one of the big tenets of it is like service, and you go and you kind of give back, and so I was really grateful to have that opportunity. Actually, it was really cool.
Yeah.
Told my story through my songs and stuff like
Great.
that.
It was amazing. Well, it's with my history and I mean, right off the top, I'm in recovery myself. I didn't get into recovery easily. I haven't stayed in recovery easily. It's been a really tremendously difficult journey for me, a journey that's nearly cost me my life a few different times. And I'm always struck by the fact that since I shouldn't be here, that I'm here for a reason. And so the last couple of years have really been more focused on how do I sort of bring the gift of music to people who might not otherwise be able to get out to see it, right? And then how do I also maybe make amends for my bad behavior over the years? Because certainly there was like a 15-year period where I went literally from treatment center to recovery house to relapse to treatment center to recovery house, caught a couple tours in there. Yeah, screwed him up royally, of course.
Played with us a little bit.
Played with us, yeah. Played with you a little bit.
Yeah, Carl, you've been in Killbillies, and that was it's we've known each other musically for a long time. Played together a lot.
Played together a lot.
Yeah, it's cool. But,
and so you got to see one of my disappearing acts in real time.
Yeah,
and you even said like I saw it coming, and then there
was this one gig we were playing, and don't get me wrong, at the time I was not being a good boy either, but it was kind of really around the beginning of when I was sort of realizing the difference between enjoying a drink and hang on, I have absolutely no control over this. But so I was becoming aware of it at the time, and also some other people in the band had been going through it. And me moving to the US had been a huge education in all of this. I don't even know if I would have ever made it into recovery had I not moved to the US, because for some reason everything just seems like Well, there's a lot. We live in Florida. There's a lot more awareness of it.
There is.
And also, it just seems
That's
like you
not
get in
always,
trouble
that's not always a
faster
good
here,
thing.
yeah.
That's not, yeah, and that's exactly, you get in trouble faster here. And so Florida has this sort of transient culture to it that a lot of people come here from other states. A lot of them come here to try and get well initially.
Yeah.
What happens is they come here to treatment from another state, and then they get sort of into the system here. And what that looks like is a whole lot of trips to treatment, ringing up the insurance bill to, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and all in this, what's oftentimes, more often than not, a not successful attempt to get their shit together.
Right.
And so, along with this music and healing, I'm around a lot of suffering, a lot of death, a lot
Right.
of anguish. It's not an easy field to be in. I get to see people at probably their most difficult period in their life.
Yeah.
And but every time I go in and do one of these groups, I leave very, very grateful for everything that I have, and very fortunate to be spared and to bring music to anybody, much
Yeah.
less kids that are going through the same thing that I did. But
I've only done it a little bit with you, but I know that through me going and working in that, I felt, well, if I'm going to be going there and telling, you definitely feel a responsibility to be honest to yourself and to them,
And you can't bring it unless you're walking it. I
Right.
found that out the hard way. By the
right.
way, I found all my lessons in life have been the hard way. I've not learned anything the easy way
Tell me about
once.
it.
But there was a point before COVID happened, and COVID was just a disaster for us as musicians, a disaster for us in the recovery community.
Yeah.
Has been, I don't care how you doll it up. It's just been a hard 2 years for us. I lost my recovery at the beginning of COVID. My
Right.
mom got seriously ill. I was working a lot of hours at the treatment center, and I wasn't doing any self-care. And I learned a valuable lesson about, putting the oxygen mask on myself before I'm trying to put it on other people,
Yeah.
And then also, if I'm going to be in recovery and if I'm going to talk about things like being spiritually balanced and centered, then I better be doing the freaking work myself. And, there was a time where I was just talking it, not doing it. And then it just, of course, came apart at the seams like it always does. But I've learned a lot. In the last 3 years, I've learned most of what I've learned in life. I've learned the last 3 years, really.
Yeah. That's
It was, I went to Austin, Texas, and I was at a point, and before that slip at the beginning of COVID, I put together some years in recovery, and when I got to Austin in
built up that,
2017, I was done, and I was looking out windows to decide which tree branch to hang myself off of, and I had finally said, man, like it was my parents, I think, told me one time they had spent $400,000 on my treatment, and that was, forget about the insurance companies on top of that, so.
Yeah.
You're looking at like a $2 million kid right here, shoved full of drug treatment, and none of it worked. And so I got to Austin, and I got a mentor, and he said, man, he goes, take your violin, and he goes, find some old people that can't afford music and go play for them. And I'm like, yeah, but Jason, man, you don't understand. Like, I'm covered in tattoos. I got this mohawk. The old people don't like me,
Yeah.
And he's like, just try it, man, try it. And I went out and I played for these old people. I might as well have been like George Strait going in there. Like
Yeah.
they had not had live music in this place for like 3
Right.
years.
You were a
They're
god to
medicated,
them.
right,
Yeah,
man. And I
yeah.
walked in,
Absolutely.
and it was like they didn't give a shit about the tattoos, man. They were just so grateful to have music, anything.
Yeah.
I mean, and truthfully, it could have been amateur music, and they would have been happy.
Yeah.
They would have been happy with a karaoke night,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
Christ's sake. And so I left, and I was like, man, for a little bit, I didn't think about killing myself. I didn't think about going and shooting heroin.
Yeah.
I felt kind of connected, and I maybe thought like, shit, well, this is what I'm supposed to be doing with music. This is,
Yeah.
and my mom told me this recently, my first gig when I was a kid on the violin was playing for kids with cerebral palsy.
Really?
When I was 10 years old. And,
Oh, there you go.
So, and I'm going to get to the end of the story quickly.
Oh,
I
no,
promise.
this is-
But this is an important.
Please.
This is what I want going forward to be the centerpiece of my life. Is this little initiative that we started in Austin, and I had 30 days clean. I was just out of treatment, and everybody's just like, man, go to a meeting and shut your mouth and do the same thing I had done the other 20 times that didn't work, right? And so this guy Jason was like, no, do that gig. And so I put a post up on Facebook, which isn't good for much, but it's good for this. So
Sure.
I put a post up on Facebook, and I said, who wants some free music for Christmas, right? And I get this message back from this teacher in this little tiny town in Smithville, Texas, and she goes, man, I've got 10 special needs kids, and they can't afford Christmas. And I'm like, okay, so what do they want for Christmas? And in 7th grade, like I wanted like remote control car, like, I don't know, Legend of Zelda, whatever it was at that time. And these kids, one kid wants a chocolate milkshake for Christmas, and his family can't afford it for him.
Oh, man.
And like, I need a belt because I don't have a belt to wear to school, man. And I tell you, man, like, I got this message, and it was like, this is why you've never gotten your shit together. It's because it's always been about
Yeah.
man? And so I got 7 of my recovery buddies. We were like, a lot of them were amateur musicians. These guys were just like little pluckers on the weekend, right? And I said, guys, we're going to load up the treatment center van. We're going to bring some special needs kids some presents, and we're going to go play them some music for Christmas, right?
That's awesome.
And so we go to the school, and we did it. I hadn't cried in 20 years. I spent the afternoon with these kids just like, it did more for me than 20 treatment centers in one afternoon, in one afternoon. And that's when I started the nonprofit, and that continues to this day. We can talk about that more later, but that's what music has become about for me. It's not about, like we were talking about earlier, it's just like the bar gigs. I played one last weekend and I left and I was like, this doesn't bring me a lot of joy.
Right, yeah.
I got my money, but it didn't really bring me a lot of joy, and I was sort of wall decoration. When I go play for some special needs kids, man, the love that you feel like for going and doing this kind of work is just like, it's everything I always wanted music to be and never could find it,
That's
I
great.
gotta tell you, I haven't done it in years, but my father-in-law's since passed. But my father-in-law used to do. He was a musician, and he used to do a lot of. He put together a group. It was older people, and they put together a group called the Sunshine Golden Heirs. And the Sunshine Golden Heirs,
Nice.
I would go with them sometimes, just to support and whatever. And they were basically a choir group, and he would play the keyboard and do some piano stuff or whatever. And they would go and if it was Christmas time, they would do Christmas caroling, and if it was other times, they would just do like. Just big band kind of songs that older people would resonate to and just kind of enjoy. And they would go to these old folk facilities, basically these retirement homes and stuff. And like you said, they don't get stuff like that. They don't get the live music. They're just sitting there in their room. They're watching TV. They get an occasional family member that visits or whatever, and they would just light up like it was. I mean, and some of these people that looked like they couldn't even get out of bed were suddenly like standing up with their walker and like kind of dancing and stuff.
So awesome.
And it was just amazing. So
It's amazing.
Yeah. So I mean,
It's the power of music,
I
man.
can. I 100% see where that was a big
Well,
deal.
for those of us in recovery, as Ben correctly points out, it's the element of service is so important for all of recovery models. It doesn't matter whether it's AA, NA, CA, refuge recovery, smart recovery. It all talks about thinking about your own bullshit less and going out and helping people more. And as a result, you don't feel like self-destructing, and you feel like you're in the stream of life, right?
Yeah.
When I go out and play for these kids, man, I tell you, like, I feel 1,000 times better when I leave that building than when I go in, each and every time I do. Now, I'll tell you this, the 6 people that agreed to be a part of this nonprofit when it started, we did it for a year, and they volunteered once a week.
Yeah.
All 6 of these musicians stayed sober.
Yeah,
And
wow.
as you know, in this business, 100% recovery rate in 1 year.
Just not
it's
a
just
real
it's
thing,
not it's
yeah.
not a realistic thing.
Yeah.
Now, do I think that this is the answer for addiction? No. But I do know that these 6 people would tell you that a lot of the reason why they might have stayed sober that first year is because they were out there using their talent, having a good time doing it, and in the process healing some people, right?
That's amazing.
I think part of, if you're a musician or someone who works in the service industry, there is this horrible feeling that, how am I going to do this? Like, the drug of choice is who I am. It's like how I do what I do, and there's a big fear surrounding that. I definitely had worried about that. Just how am I going to handle being in bars and the whole kind of culture of bars and da da da. But actually, it's fine. You can get past that, and for me personally, it's because it's for a lot of reasons, but one is I figure out, how I'm getting there, how I'm leaving. I'm not doing any sort of hanging around afterwards. And also the other guys in the band, Hector and James, just out of a courtesy to me, and I never asked them to do it, don't drink.
It's amazing.
It's crazy.
It's amazing. And you're friends.
Yeah.
They're your true friends.
Yeah.
And that's how you know they're your true friends.
Yeah,
because they would do something like that. No,
it just seemed like the right thing to do. When I first started playing in the band, and found out he was in recovery, James and I talked about it. It just seemed like the right thing to do. If he's dealing with this and we're his friend and we really are his friend, why are we going to sit there and like pound beers in front of him and stuff? It just seems obnoxious to me.
None of my friends that I gig with on the weekends stay sober around me. In fact, the last month and a half, I've been around somebody in a K-hole that showed up to one of my gigs. And, I've been around somebody who's just been absolutely obliterated
How do you
trying to play a
music
set.
on K?
Well, here's the thing is as you know, it's an energetic thing on stage, and you guys are all sober, so you are in communion with each other, right?
Yeah.
Like when there's one guy who's high on, it doesn't matter what it is, actually. It's anything. And you got other two guys or one other guy that's sober, the energy's just going to be completely whacked. Whacked.
Well, and I'll tell you, I mean, I've never gotten to that point where I'm just obliterated all the time or anything, but I have been in plenty of bands where I drank. I mean, I had at least even just a few to knock off the edge, as they say, before I play or whatever. The truth is that ever since I've been in Killbillies and we just don't drink when we play.
Yeah.
I can't honestly say that I've ever walked away from the gig, like, oh, that really sucked or whatever. Like,
yeah, you can actually play your instrument.
It has
you remember the set?
Well, it had nothing to do.
You don't go to bed with Bo Derek and wake up with Bo Diddley. That's the greatest line from a song ever.
It's true.
It's true. Yeah, it's true. We've all done that. Come on now. It's an honest podcast.
All right, true story, and I digress, but true story. When I was in the Nirvana tribute, before Justin was our Kurt Cobain, we had another guy that was our Kurt Cobain, and he drank a lot, and he actually, I'm pretty proud of him. We're friends on Facebook. He's moved away now, but he's actually in recovery now. Like
right.
So I'm really proud of him and everything. But at the time he was drinking a lot, and we went. I don't even remember where it was, like North Carolina or something. We were traveling around with the band, and he got obliterated, and the drummer and I were stone cold sober.
Yeah.
And we went into the room. And drummer took a shower, went to bed. I took a shower, went to bed. And of course, the room's got two beds, so somebody always ends up, sleeping in the bed with either you or the other guy, or And it's.
I don't like where this is going.
And I wake up. So he was the last one to take a shower or whatever. And I wake up the next morning, and like for like a split second, I'm thinking you're just kind of groggy when you wake up. For a split second, I'm thinking I'm home or whatever because I have an arm around me. And I wake up and I realize he's laying in bed with me, naked, with his arm around me.
Wow! Man.
And I'm like, wow.
Crap,
So there you go. You go
well,
to bed.
on the opposite
I went to
side
bed
of
with
things,
nobody and woke up with my singer.
I went up. I was playing a gig in Asheville. Actually, it was after I was in recovery, and I get off stage, and this guy from another band comes up to me and he goes, "You Carl?" I'm like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
He goes, "You Carl from South Florida?" And then I'm like, double uh-oh. And he's like, "Do you remember the time, like, I don't remember it at all, but like evidently in front of 150 people, I got on this guy's roof in Fort Lauderdale, took off all my clothes and like just bungee jumped into the pool, in a complete blackout, have no idea about it." And he's like, "Dude, you were infamous for a year and a half for that." And it was like shocking at the time. Then it became funny. Then it became like, I really pulled some dumb shit back in the day, And I tell you, Ben, like one of the things is that when you get blacklisted or when you've had a lot of issues, getting back in people's good graces, especially when you're a repeat offender, is incredibly difficult, man.
Yeah.
And it's given me a really big heart for people that struggle a lot.
Yeah.
For sure.
Because
I mean, my dad told me very young, reputation is hard won and easily lost. It's like the first thing it's an important thing to learn as a growing human. And when you feel like you have lost it, it's a horrible feeling. And sometimes you have, and getting it back is very hard.
It's incredibly difficult, man. It's challenging and it'll be a life's work. It'll be a life's work building it back up.
For sure.
I'm just, I'm grateful that I got the opportunity to do it. I had a friend a week and a half ago that passed of an OD. Very incredible guitar player. Lived down here for a while. Was doing well for a year and a half. Made a bad decision. Went out for one weekend and toast. So we got to be vigilant.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. So, when you were young, like real young, what kind of music were your parents listening to, and how did you end up starting to play the violin? So what was the musical environment when you were a kid?
It was my mom and dad are not musicians.
Yeah.
My mom and dad both like classical music, right?
Right.
So at 3 years old, they gave me the violin. I started when I was 3 on a Cracker Jack box with a ruler attached so I could learn how to hold it. And I started the Suzuki method. And so that's an ear training method of repetition back and forth.
Yeah.
Teacher plays something, you play something. It's an ear training method. And so...
How did they have the foresight to send you to someone to do that?
Because I was ADHD. I was such a hyperactive little shit. And so they figured we got to give him something to settle him down.
Gave him something to focus on.
I mean, look, dude, I have probably the worst ADHD of anybody I know. And if I didn't have the violin, man, I'd be toast.
Right.
I'm telling you, man, it's the one thing that I can sort of focus in on. The rest of life is sort of a blur.
Yeah.
I mean, like... What is it? The right brain, that's our artistic side, is just like, and my left brain is like a P, the rational part. Anyway, so they give me the violin at 3 and 7 or 8. I'm going into New York City and starting to become like more interested in the study of the instrument, all classical at this point. And up until I was probably 11, it was strictly classical music, and I was, while my friends were out playing sports, I was in the practice room playing Mozart.
Sure.
And
that was kind of me too. I did a lot of that.
A lot of that, man.
Yeah.
And as you
can
imagine,
did a bit more than me, though.
In 7th grade, let me tell you guys and you, the most uncool thing in the entire universe when you are in 7th grade is to be the kid who plays the violin.
Yeah.
So I was mercilessly picked on.
Right.
Mercilessly picked on. Plus, my parents were very old-fashioned, so they
Where are
would,
you
they would
living
shop
at this point again?
I'm living in New Jersey,
Right.
a very affluent suburb of New York.
Right.
And so I started getting introduced to I think it was like 80s glam rock was the first introduction to. My first concert was Tears for Fears and Blondie.
Oh, really?
That gives you an idea.
Cool.
That's awesome.
At 13, I played Carnegie Hall for the first time.
Wow.
And I'm starting to get recognition in the area.
Right.
And so things are looking really good
So
for
when
me.
you played Carnegie Hall, what kind of gig was that?
Well, so maybe back to the recovery thing. What I pulled away from it, my family came in from all over the world. It was incredible. I mean, it was just like it's where you want to go as a musician. It was like, and it was happening at 13. And
Wow.
I went across the street to Ray's Pizza on 57th and 7th, and I chugged down almost a 6-pack of beer to get rid of the nerves, and with my little friend Earl, I'll never forget him. And so we snuck off across the street and drank, and that should have been a sign of what was to come. But
Yeah.
I was always nervous, I had pretty bad stage fright.
That feeling that you get where it's the one thing that you love and you want to do, and you're terrified of it at the same time. I know exactly how you feel.
And it's the one thing you're really good at and connected
Exactly.
with. And yet, so, what happened was Dave Matthews came out right around this time, right? In my sophomore year of high school, he started to get a little bit big. And all of a sudden I went from a zero to a hero because every band that was trying to sound like Dave Matthews Band wanted a violin player.
Right,
so I got recruited. I got recruited to the party guys in high school. And so then it sort of began my love affair with the Grateful Dead and Fish and Widespread Panic and the improvisational music and a lot of psychedelics. And,
Well, that's it. Everything that goes along with that. It's in the UK, right?
Yeah.
It's that scene and the kind of same people.
It's Osric Tentacles over there, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It is.
It's Osric
Yeah.
Tentacles, but it is Osric Tentacles.
I played with him.
Really?
Yes, I did.
Edwin.
At a rave in Austin, Texas in 2018.
Yeah.
He's doing Simon... Someone or other.
Simon Posford?
Yes.
That guy?
Simon
Oh, my
Posford.
God.
Yep.
Hallucinogen guy.
Yes.
Yeah,
Is that...
you played with him, too?
I played with him.
That's unbelievable. He's one of my childhood heroes.
Is he really?
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't even know who I was playing with when I
Yeah,
played with him.
yeah.
I had no idea. It's like this big guy from England. I'm like, shit, I don't even know who he is.
That's really cool.
If it's not Fish or Widespread Panic, I probably don't know much about it.
Well, yeah. So anyway, the jam band scene in England is much more dance music like.
Yeah.
Like over here, people don't go. in England, we don't go and like watch a jam band play for 8 hours. We go for raving. And,
yeah.
and you do get that over here as well, except that there's also this jam band scene, which is like kind of adjacent to it, but a different thing. We just don't really, apart from Ozzy Tentacles that are kind of like a bit of a unicorn in England, there's not a lot of that going on.
Right.
Yeah.
I know a lot of deadheads that would argue with you about the rave reference, but I absolutely the similarities are very similar in that whole culture and the whole tune out and drop some acid.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, truthfully, and
it's like a lifestyle. You know, it's like a 24-hour, 7 days a week thing.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, I went to college, and truthfully, I mean, I was asked to leave after 2 semesters. They were like, "We don't think you're ready for college." Now I was on a full music ride, and I'd go to class and they'd be like, "Is it visitors day today?" You know, because I'd never go to class. I'd be out following fish around or something. And truthfully, all I learned about music and the connection with music and audience, I learned from watching bands like that and how they interact with the audience. And I learned things like don't say too much between the songs and how to blend one song into another song really cool, and like how to do all these cool things I learned by just watching and soaking it up, man. And you know, I had so many good times in the 90s. I moved to Colorado after I was asked to leave college. I moved to Colorado and with a couple friends from high school.
What happened with college?
You know, truthfully, Ben, I mean, I did really well in private lessons and in orchestra, but music theory, it was like the classroom side of music, it was just, it never took. Like,
I found it hard. I found it really hard.
It was really hard. I mean, it was more math than music. And I would be so busy studying musicology or ear training or working on orchestra parts that I would start feeling like a robot and that I wasn't really making music with the instrument. And so I said, "Hey, man, you know, like I think this school isn't going to work out." They felt exactly the same way, so it was a mutually agreed upon split.
Right.
And then off to Colorado.
All right, and then the adventures began.
I
saw there was some kind of at one period of time, weren't you in some kind of conservatoire in Boca or something?
What was
the deal with that?
So on a Sunday night in Dubliner, in Boca Raton, I was playing at Dubliner.
Right.
And it was a shit Sunday night. There was nobody in the place. Like one table of people was in the Dubliner. And me and my friend Jerry were playing. And so we're playing the gig, and I'm trying to give it my 100%. And this lady comes up to me at set break, and she's like, "Were you classically trained?" And I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "Who's your teacher?" I said, "This guy Mitch Stern from New York." She's like, "It was a shame when he died." And I'm like, "Fuck, does this lady know my violin teacher from New York that he died, you know?" And And she goes, "Well, I want you to come over to the table and meet some people." And I'm like, "Okay." So I walk over to the table. The one table in the place happens to be the string faculty from Lynn University, which is one of only 3 total scholarship conservatories in the whole world. Juilliard being one and Cleveland Institute being another.
Yeah.
So I go over, I talk to them, and they said, "You know, what happened with school?" And I told them the same thing I told you. I was like, drugs, you know.
Right, yeah.
Drugs happened with school. And they said, this lady said, "Well, why don't you come play for me next week? Play a classical song." I was like, "I haven't played in 15 years at that point." She goes, "Just come play for me." So I went and played for her. And a week later, I had a letter in my mailbox that said, "We'd like to offer you a full ride to come back and finish your degree at Lynn University." So I ended up going back for a year and a half. Didn't finish the degree because the same thing came up.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, it was a wonderful experience. I got to add a lot of student debt to my life. And good times, man, you know?
Yeah. That's funny.
The never-ending student debt.
So,
do you write music?
It's a great question. I mean, I write music, yes.
Right.
I do. So oftentimes I'll go in the studio, I'll be a hired gun, I'll be asked to write a part.
Right.
I'll be asked to write a solo.
Yeah.
If you're asking if I write lyrics to songs, they all sound so pitifully cheesy. I gave up on it a long time ago.
Gotcha.
And I said, I'll write the music, not the lyrics, you know?
No, fair enough. And the other question I have that's kind of related to it is, do you practice at home, and how much do you practice if you do, and what kind of stuff do you practice?
So, of late, I've been practicing more. It's not become a daily discipline like it probably needs to be. But you know, I'm experimenting, as I think I told you, with electronic music production.
Yeah, I want to get. I want to help out with that. That sounds interesting.
Well,
to me.
you gave me a number. I'm going to blast you on this one. The guy like totally flaked on me. I was like,
Oh, no.
I told him the idea. He probably thought I was just some schmuck from Craigslist that was like, I'm this violin player that wants to play
that
electronic dance
sucks.
music. Anyway, the long and the short is I love marrying electronica to the violin. It's really
sure.
suited for classical violin. So
For sure, I have a good friend who actually makes a living doing that in Mallorca.
incredible, right?
Yeah.
And so
I've done it with sax, but it's not quite as cool. But yeah.
it's actually cool. Did you see the poll on the sexiest type of musician?
I did
You
see
did?
that,
It was drummers, guitar players, saxophone players, number 3, and violins like 8.
I know, yeah. I don't know what
8.
happened with that.
I don't know. What
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, the top 3 are the 3 instruments Ben plays in the band. So we determined that Ben equated to like 76% of the band's sexiness.
And that's about right. I'm just
That makes sense.
It's actually a pretty funny story. There's this place in the north of England near Manchester where they had a funky house night once every couple of weeks. And I was like, you know how for a bit it was like they'd hire like either like a conga player and either a sax or a violin. And like I was the sax guy. And I did that. I used to go up there and have all these sort of late middle-aged ladies on tons of MDMA asking me to take my shirt off. It was the weirdest gig.
man.
Weirdest gig.
I was in Florida.
No, it was in England.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. In Manchester.
Yeah, I did that for about 6 months. Used to
my
then
God.
drive home, and I was driving, and at the time, with my whole kind of drinking thing, I hadn't gotten to the point where I was just kind of whatever, I'll drive and drink. I was staying sober to drive and stuff like that. So and I had to drive back, but it was quite far. I think it was in Burnley, which is quite far away from Manchester, and so I had to drive him back at like sort of. I'd get home at like 6:30 in the morning. Definitely a young man's gig.
Yeah.
I'd go there. I'd get there about 11 and come home about 6:30 in the morning, and just watch
Sounds
everyone
like
get
torturous.
progressively
It
more
sounds
like.
torturous to me
Yeah,
now,
it
dude. I
was.
mean, like this is incredibly late for me. Like this is
Yeah,
the
yeah.
latest I've been out since that bar gig I played the other week.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
about that.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm practicing Ableton to get back to your question. Just doing a little bit of work trying to learn this program. So that's where the
Okay.
energy is lying now, is to try and learn a new instrument basically in the computer.
So when you did the Suzuki method, that is what it's called, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. For some reason, I was suddenly like, "Hang on, is it the Yamaha method?"
No.
it is.
Suzuki.
Okay.
Suzuki.
When you did the Suzuki method, does that involve the same kind of structure as having other lessons, like you practice when you're at home? and stuff?
It does, but I tell you what's interesting is that once I got to like New York teachers, they were like, the Suzuki method is awful, because it
Really?
doesn't teach you to read music off the bat. It teaches you to listen to music and to hear it, right? Okay. So I heard the criticism. I was never a technical player. I was never the fastest player, but I was a guy who could connect to my heart into the instrument,
Oh, sure.
right? And so I would get, like, my one teacher, Zvi Zeitlin from Russia, like, threw a dictionary at me for missing a G major scale. That's the classical training, is it's very regimented, and I'm just not a very regimented guy. With the classical music, I always felt a natural kinship to that, I guess.
Sure.
I guess.
That's
Just because
wonderful.
it's what I was introduced to, it's what I've been most interested in, I guess, is
Yeah.
the word for it.
I mean, I did a classical music degree. I'm right there with you. I love it too. I think my kind of just the way that I play music suits itself better to something more collaborative and in the moment and jammy. But I have, at times it was the saxophone was my main
Right.
instrument with that, and I've had to do recitals and stuff like that. But I really don't enjoy that pressure. That's not something I like.
No, not with the dressing up. And truthfully, getting back to the Suzuki thing, because I kind of lost track of my thought, is that my teacher, when I was at Lynn, I took a couple classes with a guy named Elmar Oliveira. And he is the only American violinist to win the Tchaikovsky competition. Like, just
Oh,
a
wow.
brilliant guy. I mean, one of the best. And he came out to one of my gigs and was just hanging out with his wife. And I was like, Elmar, come on up and play a song. And he was like, no, no, no. And I was like, you're the best violinist in the world, man. Come on up and play a song, for Christ's sake, right? This guy, I'm telling you, man, like could not have played a 1-4-5 blues if you had set it down at quarter note equals 60. I'm telling you, man, like the guy can read like Mahler symphonies like it's the back of his hand, but if you put him into a improvisation, it's like they can't do it. And so
that's so interesting.
And he had the training that they wanted me to have that I didn't have, and I've got the training that I now thank God that I got the ear training.
So Suzuki
I'm the one
helped
that can,
you with the jamming.
Dude, it's the main reason why I can hear as well as I hear is because of the Suzuki method.
You do have a
because
great,
I started it when I was
perfect
young.
pitch, right?
It's perfect pitch.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, mine's a little flaky. Some days I have perfect pitch, which means I have imperfect pitch. I don't have it, but it's a bit flaky. Sometimes I feel like I do, like because it's just coming naturally. And other days I'm like, that's an A, and people are like, no, that's a B flat.
Well, the violin is an incredibly unforgiving instrument, man. Let me tell you, like there's no getting around the intonation thing, and there's no getting around the stylistic thing with the bow. It's almost like two different instruments working simpatico with each other.
Yeah.
And I tell you, man, like when I have a student that'll call me for lessons, I'll immediately, the first thing I say to him is, you got to give 90 days to sounding like a screeching cat. Like at the very least, 90 days is probably generous. To be truthful, it's more like 6 months to a year. But this instrument is very complex. It's a very complex instrument with a lot of nuances to it. And I'm so grateful that I had that really solid education when I was young.
Yeah.
Before I started screwing up. So that, and
like
somehow,
learning a language or something. It's so difficult that it's like trying to pick it up as an adult. That's why no one ends up learning it as an adult.
It's
crazy.
Mean,
occasionally people do, but it's very difficult.
And like there's a lot of days where, because of all the brain damage I've got, like I can't hardly remember my own name, but I can pull that thing out and I can play the Mozart violin concerto note by note perfectly, just like it was yesterday that I learned the thing. It's crazy. And that's like a 10-page thing, and it's just like, broop,
Yeah, I've still got all sorts of weird pieces that I learned when I was young, just indelibly marked in my head.
If people, if people could see the inside of like a musician's head, what floats around in there all day, it's just like, oh my God.
But I'll tell you, in Killbillies, we do this thing where we kind of switch instruments around a little bit, and he'll play mandolin, I'll play guitar, and then James will switch over to bass and stuff, and so we kind of just we toy around with the idea of playing different instruments and stuff, and I had this, I don't know, like I for one of the songs, I thought, it'd be cool to play a harmonica, so I did that. And then for some reason, there's one of our songs that I thought, man, it'd be really cool. It's a cover song, but I thought, man, it'd be really cool because it's got a really, signature violin, fiddle, if you will. And I was like, man, it'd be really cool if, like, for that song, like, James would play bass and then Ben would play guitar and I would actually bust out the, fiddle. So I went out and I bought like some student fiddle for like, $100 or whatever it was, $80 or whatever. And I'm like,
unforgiving.
And I'm like, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to learn it. I've been trying for probably close to 7 months now. And I'm still in the screeching cat phase. Yeah. And I can't get past it.
Dude, I would say, like, in all seriousness, and I mean this with all sincerity, as much as I've studied this instrument, as many hours, as much blood and sweat and tears has gone into that piece of wood, I probably truthfully know about 20% of the instrument, maybe even less. Wow. I mean, there's guys that have come along, before me that like, guys like Paganini or guys like Bach that just musically are just in a different, just in a different freaking league,
Yeah, Paganini's wonderful violins.
Mozart churning out concerto after concerto, just like divinely inspired people. And it's like one of the songs that I'll play tonight is Bach, and like, I listened to like Baroque period music or stuff like that back in the 1700s, where it was like most, if not all, of the music was written about religion or God, which is kind of weird to me. I'm not really like a card-carrying Catholic anymore, but the music is just so incredibly beautiful, man. Yeah. And like, I think if most people could get past the going to orchestra concerts is the most boring thing on earth because the people are wearing tuxes and it's like every Karen in America is there drinking Chardonnay and in a tuxedo, if we could dispel. I've been trying to take the class out of classical music for 30 years. I think I'm doing a good job. But it's true, because if you put classical music in front of people and they listen to it, they're like, where's this been all my life? You know, it's so incredibly beautiful and soothing and complex. And from a musical theory point of view, those guys were just like light years ahead of what pop music is today.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly. It's not even in the same world.
Not even in the same world.
And like, I know that some of my most transportative musical moments have been listening to some of my fellow students at university playing Rachmaninoff on the piano. It's just like takes you to some crazy places,
man. A different place. Those guys were. I think a lot of it is because they lived in a much simpler time. They lived in a much different time period where they didn't have a lot of the modern pressures that we have. You know, like, I mean, I swear, the further we progress as a society, or like with electronics, the more we regress. Yeah. In the other areas, you know, and music included. Like, I see the direction that music is headed, and I'm like, man, if this is any indication of how the world is going, like, we are in deep shit. Like, if we've gone from Bach 100%. to like Lil Woozy, you know, like.
Well, I know that Bach was employed by a rich patron and like contractually obliged to write a certain amount of music. Yes. And so this was part of the reason why he has such a huge catalog. But and the other thing I think that which we forget is because nothing was recorded until relatively recently, a lot of the dross people were playing, we just don't know about. I mean, I'm sure there was plenty of terrible music. I'm sure there was terrible music on every street corner.
I'm sure.
But we just don't know about it, you know?
I'm sure.
Yeah, and only the good stuff has survived.
Only the good stuff.
Yeah.
So much good stuff there is, by the way.
I mean, yeah, no doubt about it. Do you have any future plans? What's in the works?
I would love so Grace Notes Project is the nonprofit that I started, and you know, when right before COVID hit, we were having such a great run of successes. We had partnered with a few facilities in Fort Lauderdale, and we were bringing music to some special needs day halves, and it was just like, it's the greatest joy in my life. And so when COVID hit, obviously music went, and especially bringing music into a healthcare facility where there's elderly people or special needs kids. Yeah. These are the first programs that got cut. So we went from doing really well to really not doing too well. It's part of what made the last 2 years so difficult, truthfully, is because like I developed such a bond with these kids, you know, and I credit, you know, a special needs kid for saving my life. And so, you know, I'd really like to make this my full-time vocation and to get to introduce, you know, other musicians in recovery the same opportunity to go out and to play for these kids and to experience that same freedom. Yeah. Freedom from addiction, freedom from selfishness, and just like, you know, total connection with another human being. And so, yeah, that's my future plans. Maybe make some electronica and go play for some people that can't afford it, and try not to destroy my life in the balance. I have a wonderful relationship with just an amazing partner.
That's great.
And she has a beautiful 14-year-old daughter that I get to be a part of their life now. And I couldn't be more honored about that. I think that dynamic
where there's someone that's more important than you, again, that's a great thing to have, as someone who you know, has this kind of self-centeredness run riot, like, you know, I think Alex too. So if you have a person in the family unit that's the most important person and it's not you, that's a good thing, you know.
Well, trust me, I'm as surprised as anybody that you know that you know I've been put in a position where I'm able to be you know, a role model and this kid might not have another positive role model to look up to some days, you know, and so that becomes like, it becomes bigger than you know, and trust me, you know, there's still days and there's still moments in the day when I think about doing some dumb shit, and you know, that's part of the human experience is sometimes wanting to go do dumb shit, right? And so, you know, because I have this life, you know, I have this incredible life with this incredible woman and this incredible kid that count on me to be a man of integrity, and count on
Yeah.
me not to, and to count
Integrity
on
is
me
the word.
It is,
Yeah.
and to count on me to do the things that I talk about doing at the treatment center, to continue doing that stuff in the other 23 hours a day when I'm not working in the treatment center, right? And that's exactly what we talked about with the practice what you preach. And so, you know, she is an animal rights activist. She has a wonderful animal sanctuary in Loxahatchee.
cool.
So I'm around 70 animals.
That's amazing.
6 pigs, 50 ducks,
Oh, cool.
chickens, peacocks.
Wow.
I adopted a special needs dog about 3 months ago. So I've got all these things in my life other than music that bring me a lot of joy too.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you know, so
And
music
things that
in
need
life,
taking care of, you know, that's great. The responsibility.
it's a great responsibility. It's
Yeah.
I think it's one of the biggest honors of my life is to get to be able to show up in that context and
Right
to
on, man.
and part about, you know, continuing forward in that is making amends, you know, is
Yeah.
to continue to make amends
Yeah.
by the way that I'm living today for the way that I used to live, you know.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that, you know.
That's wonderful to hear. I'm so glad everything's going so well for you right
Thank you,
now.
my brother.
And why don't we have you play a couple of songs for us?
I would love to. Thanks, Ben.
Great.
Favorite songs.
Yeah, mine too, man.
I love it.
Damn, got a little out of tune in the middle, but it's all good. What did you think, Ben? Keepers?
Sounded beautiful.
Sound beautiful to me?
Yeah.
Good.
Great, mate.
I noticed at some angles you could see the green screen stuff messing with the violin itself. So we might want to take that one in post. It wasn't terrible. It's just occasionally you can see it.
See a bit of fluttering, you know?
It's weird. Sometimes on microphones or wherever there's like a light reflection. Sometimes it'll take
I
that,
got you. So
the light from that.
on the violin and reflecting the green screen. Gotcha.
So that's one of the reasons why I think I need to do a little bit more to this and darken it a little bit more. I think it's pulling some of the lightest green that's on the top. And then
I was like, the room is spinning. Oh, it's I'm like, holy crap.
it's Ben. Ben's getting all camera on us.
Where does this thing go?
Somewhere
Here?
like that.
Not there.
Somewhere.
Gosh,
You go more this way, like that?
You've already.
stick to music, man.
That's mean.
Audio visuals are not.
It's just insulting you.
Where am I going?
All right, let me put that up there so we can fine tune it.
Wait, don't move it. It's perfect.
Oh, I did.
It was perfect.
Is it perfect?
It was perfect.
This episode is brought to you by Handlebars Bar and Grill. it's a biker bar in Sequester, and it used to be called Judy's. I've been rebranded as Handlebars. My father-in-law, Peter Pinello, is doing a great job up there, revitalizing a spot in Jupiter that is, it's a landmark, basically. It's been there for years and years and years, and we have live music there. We do a bike night every second Thursday, and we have music on Saturdays from 6 to 9, and there is great food. Bernsey does a killer job on the food, and there's a whole load of different types of beer on tap, and the beer's cold, the AC's cold. You can roll in off your bike and take a little bit of a break, and there's tons of room to park your bikes. And if you're into that kind of thing, you know, a bit of a petrol head, then there's always like 4 or 5 real cool bikes pulled up, and there's people come in for the bike nights and rat rods and stuff like that. So definitely an interesting place to check out, and it's full of Jupiter Sequester characters, and it's a real local spot. So if you're interested in seeing one of the real sides of Jupiter Sequester area, then you should pop in. You should come and check it out. Yeah. All right. Carl. Could you tell us a little bit about what those songs you just played us were about?
Oh. So the first one was Ave Maria. It's a Bach and Gounod collaboration from I believe the 1600s, 1700s.
Right.
And so
I
Ave
recognize
Maria,
that. I know I can play that piano part.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that there was a piano and violin version of that.
There is. It's one of my favorite songs from when I was a kid to play. I decided to do more classical stuff tonight and kind of take it back to my roots a little
That's
bit.
great.
I get to do enough of the other stuff. So.
Go.
So that was a song that I just loved when I was a kid. It reminds me of being a kid. Good stuff. And the second one was, of course, Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen. And
my favorite songs.
That's one that
one.
It almost invariably, when I play it for the clients, it brings out a lot of tears and a lot of emotion because it's such a heartfelt message. I think we can all relate to it these days.
That piece, the Bach one, it's Preludium 1 from that book of the piano book, isn't it? It's like the first one in that awesome book. There's some fugues in there that I got like a page. The first page, I'm like, I think I got this. By like page 3,
it's crazy. It's just it's stacked on top of each. I mean, it's just incredibly complex. But that's some of the sweeter, softer classical music that I love so much. And
there's something very with Bach. It's the mathematicalness of it. It has this kind of entrancing quality. With the fugues and the interlacing melodies and everything. It's there's so much emotion that goes into Bach's writing. I'm constantly amazed when I listen to him or Vivaldi or guys from that particular. And at the time, he was really kind of inventing music theory.
Oh yeah,
everything we learn is basically what Bach kind of created.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's why that book, especially with that song in, is so important, because it's kind of like a thesis on this is how you do music.
The evolution of music theory.
Yeah. It is, and that song in itself and the way it goes, it goes through a chord progression and then it goes down to the relative minor and then it kind of modulates to the fifth and it just does it. And it's like, this is how it's almost like him going, this is how you do it.
This is how you do it. And it's just like, signed, sealed, and delivered. There you go. And there's never probably been, I look through history and having studied a little bit of music history and knowing what I know about composers, I don't know that there's a guy alive today that would even come close to Bach's level of genius musically. Considering the time that he lived in, considering there wasn't anything before him, considering the pioneering nature of that whole Baroque movement, we wouldn't have music today if it wasn't for that, and we wouldn't have music in the form we do today.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes me really grateful for the fact that my mum pushed me to do music when I was younger and how much music she exposed me to when I was younger because, that's why I know all this stuff and why I ultimately ended up doing it. So thanks, Mum.
I would like to thank my mom as well, personally, for all the lessons and hard work and sweat and tears she put into my violin. I can't even imagine the sacrifice that they made. I think about that a lot, Ben. Now that I'm older and they're much older and they're getting into their final years, and I strive to be that kind of guy now. The kind of guy that would drive my kid to New York City every Saturday and Sunday, and sit for 3 or 4 hours doing a New York Times crossword puzzle while I was inside soaking in these incredible musical lessons, and that's what they gave to me was this incredible gift. And like, I don't know that I'll ever be able to repay that kindness.
Yeah, I hear that, man. All right, so I think we're going to take a look at your violin. Can you tell us a little bit about your interesting violin?
Well, so this is a 5-string violin. It is a custom build. It is from G. Edward Luthier in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It's called the Dahlia 5-string, and so it's a viola and a violin in one. Yeah. And it's got its own proprietary electronics in it. So it's a semi-acoustic, semi-electric, and it's got an incredibly warm tone to it. It's got a great resonance. I tried a bunch of different violins. It's taken me 20 years to get the setup that I have now, and this has just been the last final puzzle piece with this incredible sounding instrument.
That's great.
Can you, for those that don't know, could you give a quick what the difference is between a viola and a violin?
So a viola would just be a fifth lower than a violin. A violin would be strung G, D, A, E, and a viola would just have a C, G, D, A. So this has a low C and a high E as well. Okay. So you're able to really give some of that lower texture when it's needed, which is great to have in a studio or in a live performance setting. It's great.
Yeah, it's a beautiful instrument, man.
It sounded fantastic.
Yeah, totally. I've played with you a lot, and the way that you play, and when you said that you could really connect your violin to, you have so much personality when you play that it's quite a weird experience playing with you because it is you coming out of it. You're very connected to your instrument, and in a way I don't think I've ever really met anyone. Just as you
can tell what kind of a day I'm having by the way that I play. I mean, it's really it is an appendage at this point. It's become such a part of me that, like, you're right. It's just so natural. It's like I can speak a sentence through the instrument, which is what I always wanted music to be. I never wanted it to be when these kids, and when I was going to like Juilliard pre-college for lessons, and these kids would be slamming down these like Paganini caprices and doing like cartwheels around me, and like I was like the slow kid who was more interested in going to see Fish, but and these days those guys all have orchestra jobs, or maybe they're teaching, and that's great. That's never what I wanted. I always wanted to connect to the heart, and very few classical musicians in the setting that I grew up in really were able to do that. I had a lot of technical masters that were miles in front of me, but not a lot could connect to the heart,
Well, I think that, one of the things that I think about my experience at going to university for music is a lot, because there were people there who were vastly more talented than me, worked way harder than me, and in that context, I was it could feel quite belittling at times, but now I have that in the bank, and all of the knowledge that I was just absorbed through osmosis just from being there, being around these incredible players. I'll never regret it, and I had all sorts of complex feelings about that in the past, feelings of imposter syndrome and stuff like that, but at this point, I can see it for what it gave me,
Absolutely.
And like how grateful I am for that.
I totally agree with that. I've had imposter syndrome more than a few times, in my life, so I can definitely relate to that. But I've found my niche. Yeah. And it's my niche. It's not your niche. It's not his niche. It's not, other violin player in Palm Beach County's niche. It's my niche, and I'm happy getting to do what I do with music, and I wouldn't be happy doing exactly what you do or what you do, Hector, or what any of my other friends do. Like, I'm happy just doing what I want to do.
That's point, exactly right. And it's not about looking around you and worrying what everyone else is doing. It's about being happy with what you're doing.
Absolutely, man. And I'm working on that daily. Hopefully the nonprofit will take off. I mean, that's my dream, is to get to do that. And I think, with some hard work in the next 2 years, once COVID really goes away, that's going to coming to fruition.
Right.
Well, I mean, getting to that point where you're doing what you love, and you're being able to share that with other people and then helping them through their recovery and stuff. I mean, that's just
music is
hands
a
down
powerful
amazing.
tool in the recovery process, and you can
absolutely.
you can get to people that are otherwise treatment resisted through music. So it's
Yeah, I mean,
the change and the catalyst for change that music can be is just it's remarkable.
Well, I'll tell you.
doubt
I mean,
about it.
you know, they say that they say that music heals and stuff, and I'm an artist as well, so like I get that. I mean, art heals, music heals. You know, all that creative stuff is just good for the soul.
Well, I was talking to my mum because my mum is a therapist, and she's worked with kids and adults and all sorts of people. And she ended up specializing in play therapy, but she knows a lot about the whole thing. And you know, since I did those couple of things with you, I've been talking to her and really thinking about educating myself further in the music therapy direction. That's definitely something that's very interesting to me.
I tell you, man, like I leave bar gigs most of the time feeling less than whole. I just
Right.
got to be honest, you know, like I leave feeling like I don't want to use the word like I'm prostituting myself because it's not that bad, but like I'm not being true to what I know my heart belongs doing with music, you know?
Yeah.
And so as a result, you know, like I sort of feel a little bit like a vacuum when I leave. Now,
And also,
when I leave,
you are very often like a hired gun too.
Oh,
you know what I
always
mean?
a hired gun.
Yeah.
Always a hired gun. And I'm also the first that can get cut, you know, and I know
Yeah.
that. But also I can pick up gigs wherever I want. So
Right.
and with ADHD, it's really great to play with 10 different bands in
Yeah.
the area 'cause, you know, you never get tired of just playing with one.
Yeah.
But that being said, it's just when you know the power of what you hold in your hands, and you know the power of it to change people, right? And
Yeah.
you know the impact it has on these kids, and you know the impact it has on these clients who are going through the worst month of their life and kicking dope and feeling like less than a piece of shit on the ground, and you bring them music, and you see a kid smile maybe for the first time in a couple months or a couple years, you
Yeah.
know? And maybe you played him a song that reminded him of his childhood, and his childhood's the only time the kid's ever felt safe in his whole life, right?
Right.
And so I've gotten to see what music can do in those contexts, and so it makes the other stuff, it's just like, when you've really hit the jackpot and you see like how good it can get,
Yeah.
then sort of regressing back to the bar gigs, I'm like, oh man.
No, I get it.
know?
The thing is because of the way that our band is and that we kind of write songs and we're kind of invested in it, and it's not okay. We do play covers, but at the same time, there's this side of it which is kind of like
Oh, you're an original band.
thing.
No, yeah, I
That-
don't think
that
you're a
gives-
cover band at all.
Yeah, that gives me enough kind of just to want to do it. But you know, as something, it's definitely as I get older and stuff. You know, the therapy side of it. Going to be happening. You're going to be seeing more of me.
Absolutely. Listen, you both actually have an open invite anytime to come play for the clients. I mean, like, I know that I've had such a struggle myself that I know what it feels like to be at the bottom, you know, and I know
Yeah.
what it was at the bottom. Like, I didn't need to get kicked when I was down. I didn't need anybody else to tell me I was a piece of shit because I already knew I was a piece of shit,
Yeah.
right? What I needed was somebody to hug me and tell me he's going to be okay and maybe sing me a song, right?
Yeah.
There's a great YouTube video by Johan Hari, whose grandfather did the Rat Park experiment, you know, and he comes to the conclusion at the end of the video, and he said, you know, all along we've been drumming up, you know, war songs to addicts, and all along we should have been singing them love songs, you know, and it just struck me like
Right, yeah.
it's exactly right, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
like the more love and connection we can bring to this very fractured world that we live in, the better, you know.
Yeah, right on, man. Well, I think we can leave it on that very profound note. And why don't we just have a little bit of a talk about the gigs we've got coming up this weekend. So are you playing this weekend anywhere?
Ben, I am, but it's a Fight Club secret sauce type of event. I do a lot of work.
That's cool.
By the way, so if you want to get me on social media, I can be a little bit more descriptive of what I do in the, you know, sort of in the plant medicine and healing community work on the weekends. But I've also seen a great amount of transformation from plant medicine. It's another discussion entirely, but I get to play at the ceremonies and assist people in their own healing process, which is just remarkable, incredible. So that's what I'll be doing this week.
Oh, cool.
That's awesome.
Okay. Yeah, what's Killbillies up to? We got Connolly's.
Yeah, man. We got two of my favorite places this weekend. Connolly's
Yeah.
on Friday night, 9 to 1.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And then Patty Mac's on
Yeah.
Saturday.
That's it.
What is that? 9 to 12?
9 to 12, yeah.
Yeah.
And then
And then you're playing
I'm
Sunday?
playing from 11 to 3 at a place called Cork in Hope Sound. If you've never been there, it's real chill. It's a real kind of like, I mean, you know, I play brunch there, and it's just a great place. It's real classy and nice, and everyone's friendly, and I always have a really good time up there. And then I have I have this gig where I'm playing country at the background of a barbecue in the evening. But maybe the less said about that, the better. Anyway, yeah. So all right, listen. Thanks so much for coming on, man. It's been a
Brother,
lot of
it was a
fun.
pleasure. Thank
Yeah,
you so much,
yeah,
Hector.
absolutely.
Thanks, Ben. I really
Yeah.
appreciate you guys.
Yeah,
Thank
cool.
you so much.
Yeah.
See you later.
Take me back.